If you were playing video games in the early 2000s, you probably recognize this place. This is Luigi's Mansion, the 2001 Nintendo first-party title developed for the GameCube. Now these halls are very nostalgic for me, as it was the first game I ever owned. And boy, let me tell you, I was scared shitless. I used to be so scared of the ghosts, I literally wouldn't leave the first room. So I just sat there trying the door and taking damage so I could die in game so the ghosts wouldn't get me. That probably doesn't point to anything wrong with me. But we're not here to talk about my childhood trauma, nor are we here to talk about the award-winning near-perfect specimen of a game than one that I consider the top of Nintendo's long list of impeccable titles. No, we're here to talk about something different. Something so mundane, so niche and specific, it may not even exist. Yes, I, of course, am referring to the November 18th, 2001 issued Luigi's Mansion for the Nintendo GameCube official guide for Nintendo Power, page 98, free Nintendo Power paid subscription glow-in-the-dark Luigi's Mansion t-shirt. A shirt that many of us know so well. And I'm here to ask the question, does this shirt even exist? It all started on a stream, twitch.tv/MountainManRS, I did a few months ago. I was feeling nostalgic and decided to read the official game guide for Luigi's Mansion on stream, as nothing screams entertainment quite like story time from a 24-year-old Nintendo game guide. I found the t-shirt on the back page and quickly did some digging online to see if I could find this shirt. Oh, no way. If I could get that t-shirt, I would be so excited. Let me see if I can find that t-shirt somewhere online, because that t-shirt goes hard as fuck. I'm not gonna lie. But the weird thing was, I couldn't find a single shred of evidence that this shirt ever existed. No pictures, no past purchases on eBay, no retro stores selling it for thousands of dollars, nothing. There's no way this shirt doesn't exist, right? But like, for it to not have any listings on even like eBay, I can't even find a picture of it online. I think that this shirt never existed. But how could they advertise that? Why would they advertise that? They have to be people who enjoyed the game enough for just the fact that you would get a shirt for $19.99, would sign up for Nintendo Power, and they would get that shirt. There can't possibly be a scenario in which this shirt is not real. This thing was a ghost. Pun most certainly intended. A few months later, I decided to crack down on this search, and I started where it all began. Now, what I have here is the official game guide from Nintendo Power, but unfortunately, there aren't many other clues to ascertain from it. I have the offer number, which doesn't do me much, as this offer probably ended about 23 years ago. And what we have here is the Japanese version of the game guide, which is a bit smaller, but does have much of the same information that the English version does. But it doesn't have the shirt anywhere, which I guess makes sense because it was published by Nintendo itself and not Nintendo Power. It did have this sick poster and the letter the ghost write to Luigi to trick him into believing he won the mansion. So the official books were dead ends for now. But we'll come back to that later. Aha! But what about a picture of the shirt itself? I backwards image searched on Google. Nothing. I looked on eBay, Etsy, Grailed, Mercari, and other online vendors, but couldn't find even a picture that shows this shirt existing in our corporeal realm. I found this sick Super Mario Sunshine shirt that appeared at the last page of the Super Mario Sunshine Player's Guide from Nintendo Power as well. But unlike our Luigi's Mansion shirt, this one here is very well documented. I mean, hell, I could even buy it for $285. Jesus, that's a lot. Let me look at this one. A much better price. Wait a minute. This one has a tag from Port & Company. but all the other versions I saw were from Haynes' Beefy collection. Oh well. Must be nothing. When I looked up Luigi's Mansion, I only got game guides, this fly-ass shirt made definitely after our glow-in-the-dark shirt, and some Luigi Mangione merch. However, I cannot endorse this shirt, because I do not know if the proceeds actually go to covering Luigi's lawyer fees. Free Luigi. Anyways, if I type in just Luigi, I get a few of these shirts, which are also dripped out.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
But they aren't what we're looking for. So I had hit... Man, those mice are painful. So I hit a bit of a roadblock. It doesn't appear that this shirt ever really existed. Nintendo Power, you lied to us, you... Uh-huh. Okay. Wait, so there is evidence of this shirt. One exists? Okay. Oh, so all I had to do was type in Nintendo Power Luigi's Mansion shirt into Google search, and I would have gotten a hit. Oh, okay. I am an idiot. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Well, it looks like I just somehow missed the most obvious lookup phrase in history, but we did find a shirt. The only evidence of this shirt having ever existed lies in a single Instagram post from March of 2022. A user by the name of Shanejag, who runs a vintage shirt auction shop on Instagram and his own website, posted about the availability of one adult large glow-in-the-dark Luigi's Mansion promo shirt with only, in parentheses, which, given my extensive search, although clearly not that extensive, doesn't seem so far-fetched. This shirt bears the markings of an official Real Deal shirt, Haynes Beefy tee and all, and what seems to be the most clear-cut sign of authenticity is the video of the shirt actually glowing in the dark. Damn, how cool do those ghosts look? Oh man, it's crazy how well the glow-in-the-dark part still holds up after all these years. Wow. So, I reached out to the seller, Shane, and the two people he had tagged in the post as well. Shane got back to me with some information about the shirt and how the auction went down, and another person tagged told me that the shirt was originally bought on eBay by Shane and then put up for auction on Instagram Live. After that, another person bought the shirt on the auction, but has since changed their name on Instagram, so that trail ends there. One final interest I have with Shane's post is in the third picture, where it shows the shirt in an advertisement. But it isn't the same advertisement as the one from our Nintendo Power game guide. So I backwards image searched the third photo and found out it's a picture from the insert that came with the physical game and box itself. I couldn't believe it. So I went to my copy of my game, and sure enough, there was the insert. And there was the shirt, advertised under my nose this whole time. Pretty crazy how deep this thing goes. What you reading? Anything good? While I wait to hear back from the collector side of things, I decided to do a bit of digging and try and find the origins of the shirt myself. If the avenue of getting one of these shirts from vintage sellers isn't an option, I thought I'd try my hand at getting one from the source. I scoured the web to find every person I could find connected to the world of Nintendo Power from 2000 to 2003, ensuring I could talk to someone who might have worked around the time these shirts were being printed. I reached out to a bunch of different former Nintendo Power people on Twitter, Blue Sky, and even LinkedIn, and had some people help out with names and other people associated with the company during the time. I ended up emailing Scott Pelland, the former publications director at Nintendo, who gave me a few other names. One of those names was Jeff Bafus, a former writer and editor, as well as sales and marketing manager for Nintendo Power from 1996 to 2007. You remember? It's not lunch break yet. Jeez. You remember I mentioned that the official game guide would come back into play? Well, here is Jeff Bafus in name on the Luigi's Mansion guide itself. Anyways, I reached out on LinkedIn and he was open for an interview. I talked with him about the shirt and he had some helpful insight on the matter.
I started as a writer / editor for the magazine in 1991, and then did that for about 3 years. And then I moved over into have you heard of the Treehouse? I took a different position and moved into the Treehouse, working on like manuals and different kind of game specific related stuff. And then that lasted a few years, and then a marketing manager position was created, I guess, back in the publications division. So I jumped back into that. Did that until 2007. Pretty much all the game development was done in Japan at Nintendo Company Limited in Kyoto. What happened, like with the Treehouse, if we want to call it that, in particular, was a lot of localization, whether it's like, doing translations of text or sound effects or whatever parts of the game needed to be localized. So that happened in there, and then like all the manuals and things like that had to be done as well. There were always deadlines to hit. Like, for example, on the Donkey Kong Country Player's Guide, I think I wrote that whole thing, and I probably did it in less than a week, and that was just crazy. There was some pretty crash course timing wise with Player's Guides in particular, because we would want to have them in store right at the same time that the game's launching, right? We'd be dealing with initially the Japanese version of the game, because that's what usually got created first. And then, all the localization would have to happen and update things. And so you can probably see how that could throw scheduling into a tailspin sometimes. We worked with an outside agency for a time, and they may have been the ones to put this ad together for us. I don't remember. There were several third-party companies, actually. So this might have actually been put together by a company called The Design, which originally was called Workhouse way back in the day. And then they were actually located like right across the street from the main Nintendo building. So they were kind of like a design agency that helped create a lot of page layouts and like game-specific strategy layouts, and actually they have like the series of strategy guides too. God, there were so many things, so many items, so many like merch kinds of things that were created over the years. I had some of that stuff, but pretty much like just gave it all away. The thing I still have from Nintendo is like my 15-year. It's a big plaque thing I could put on show it to you, but there were like third parties would create that merchandise and then store it, and just they would drop ship for us. So it wasn't always the case that we would have access to that kind of stuff. We might get a sample to do an approval on or whatever, but it's not like we could just walk into the back room and snag one. It would have been nice, but no. I suspect that because the offer period, like for this one, might have been 6 months maybe. Sort of like the shelf life of what the actual guide would have been.
So as long as the guide was stocked on a shelf, there might have been production of that T-shirt for that time.
Yeah, but I suppose it would go like, well, we expect this guide to sell this many copies, and we could maybe throw a typical percentage of subscriptions that come in from that guide with that offer, and that might dictate what an initial order for an item like this would be. And then maybe along the way I was like, oh, we need more shirts, and then another order would go through, and that was probably handled by a third party. And there still is actually a company that's not far from the Nintendo campus that handle a lot of that stuff for us. Back then it was called Ben Susan Deutsch and Associates, but now it's simply known as BDA. I think there's a lot of I guess I would call it nostalgia that goes along with a lot of things from from the 80s and 90s and even beyond at this point. But so there's like a whole group of people who were, I call it in their youth at that point, and connected hugely with video games and with Nintendo and other platforms that they love. And now they're older and they have more disposable income, and it's like, dang, I wish I had all this stuff back then, but maybe I can get it now. And so I know there's a huge number of collectors of this kind of merchandise that are out there, and I don't know. I think they're probably paying huge dollars for a lot of it too. So many things that happened within that industry back in the day that it's hard to assimilate all that, and it's impossible to get it out of any one person.
Thanks for talking with us, Jeff. I appreciate the words of wisdom from someone who was in the room where it happened. Now, Jeff had mentioned the third party responsible for the physical printing of the shirts themselves. He said the name was Ben Susan Deutsch and Associates, but that they had changed their name to BDA over the years. I looked online and they still do make shirts and merchandise for companies, but mainly focus on sports merch nowadays. Jeff mentioned the factory was nearby the original Nintendo Power offices. There is still a BDA corporation not far from the original location of the old Nintendo of America offices where Nintendo Power would have been run out of in 2001. And who do I talk to get out of here? There's ghosts. No, we're not. Pack it up. I'm out of here. If I could get in contact with someone from the BDA corporate offices, they may be able to point me in the right direction to find more information, find out about the contract, and might even have a box of all of these shirts that they had printed out that they never sent out from 10 years ago. But for now, let's move on. There was still one missing piece of this puzzle. I wanted to talk with someone from the collecting community. And that's where our friend Johnny Collects comes into the picture. He was the third person mentioned in the original auction done by Shane in 2022. Johnny is an avid video game merch collector specializing in rare Nintendo memorabilia from the 80s and 90s. Some of the shirts and collector's items he has are truly one of a kind. I reached out to him to talk to him about his dealings with the shirt and his time in the collecting community.
My name is Johnny. I go by Johnny Collects on Instagram. I've been collecting video game related items probably since around 2007, but more specifically apparel focused. I'd say about 2012-ish to current. I guess my all-time grail that I secured, I think about 2 years ago, was the 1985 Summer Consumer Electronics Show Nintendo Advanced Video System beta tester shirt. That's a mouthful, but essentially it was a shirt that was given away to the public at the booth that Nintendo had at that SCES event in 1985 in Chicago, where Nintendo unveiled what ultimately became the Nintendo Entertainment System. One shirt in particular that I consider a grail is actually from a failed console, which was the Philips CDI that Nintendo was a part of. Just a really, I don't know how to describe it other than like a really crappy Zelda game, but I have a shirt that was internally circulated to the developers that worked on the Philips CDI game, and it's a grail to me because it prominently features like Zelda for one of the first times, I think, in the vintage apparel space for like advertising related to the games. It's like sad to say that that's the case because Zelda's like such a important character in the story and a household name. The fact of the matter was that a lot of the merchandising back then didn't prominently feature like female characters, which obviously is unfortunately indicative of like sexism that has been historically rampant in the video game space. So that's like a special grail to me, I guess, not only because it's a really niche technological aspect of Nintendo, the Philips CDI games that not many people know about and like quickly died, but it's also like a very culturally significant tee in my opinion because it was one of like the first that like featured a female character. In terms of something that like nobody knows where it is, there's a couple items from some of the early Space World events that Nintendo hosted. Like, I think it was Space World 96 or 95, where there was like some pre-release version of Super Mario 64 that was unveiled. And some of the Nintendo employees that were at Space World were wearing a like metallic silver jacket that had the Nintendo 64 logo on it, and it says Space World on it. That's one item, maybe the only item, to be honest, that I can think of that like I don't know a single collector that has one accounted for. Shane is the one that found the shirt, but if you see me tagged in any post like that, 99% of the time it was because people would find something and want information on the item that they found. And that was actually what the case was with the Luigi's Mansion shirt. Was Shane reached out to me and asked me for information on it, and I provided him with a archival screenshot of the physical print that referenced the shirt, but I wasn't involved in the actual sale of the shirt or sourcing it originally. I wouldn't be surprised if the next one you found of this shirt, if you found it for $20 on eBay from someone who had no idea about this niche space in the vintage apparel collecting, marketplace. But in terms of what it would go for market price in like an informed environment in this little collecting space, I would anticipate seeing the shirt for $1,000 probably. So a lot of us had all these shirts in this collecting space, and there was never really significant market value assigned to them. So there wasn't really much risk or incentive to counterfeit anything. And then fast forward to around COVID times, a lot of the vintage apparel has gained significantly in market price and value. And with that obviously came like a flood of potential counterfeits and people trying to capitalize on that, maliciously. There's actually a really useful website and app, Legitimate, and it's designed to provide a platform where people can pay to have experts in a given field verify the authenticity of a vintage item of apparel. If you're interested in the space, like you said, it can be a really like unapproachable space to try to dive into depending on what your area of interest is. That being said, and in light of that, I think my biggest piece of advice is to pinpoint what you're specifically interested in, because it can get out of hand really quickly, and you don't want to buy the hype. There was a lot of people I saw that got burned during COVID that were buying things because they were newly discovered and extremely rare and sought after, whether or not they really like had that much nostalgia for what they were interested in chasing. Utilize the resources that are available, like Legitimate, talk to other collectors in the space. Most of us are more than willing to help, especially if you find someone that's interested in the specific area that you're interested in. But that's kind of my advice, I guess, is stick to what you like and do your research first and talk to someone before you make a purchase. We have a World of Gaming Apparel, vintage video game apparel exhibit that we curate annually at the SoCal Gaming Expo. That'll be occurring June 8th through 10th, I believe, this year. I'll be there, and you could come talk to me about any specific shirt you're interested in or just the space in general. At the last SoCal Gaming Expo, I tried to kind of group a lot of the apparel or merchandising I had that prominently featured some of the female characters or like certain minority groups that were, lead characters or supporting characters in a video game. I'd like kind of put a segment of the exhibit that was focused strictly on that to put it at the forefront of attention for everyone that was like attending the exhibit. One of the days there was like a mom walking her little kid through the exhibit, her daughter, and she saw like a Super Metroid shirt that I had on display that, prominently features Samus, and the little kid like thought it was really cool and pointed at it and was all excited, and it was just cool to see like that little moment where like a young person in the space could enjoy a female lead character and see, Samus as just as much of a badass as we would nowadays to like Master Chief in Halo, for instance. Like Peach is a perfect example. It's crazy that it took this long to have like a Peach main character game. And I mean, or even in the apparel too, like if you look back, like I can't think of a single vintage item of apparel where Peach is prominently featured. I think the first time I can think of something like that is like in the 2004, 2007 era. I think like part of the immersive video game experience is being able to identify with the character that you're ultimately controlling or playing as. And when you're stuck with like one stereotypical white male character that you're working with, it's really difficult to do that, especially in like a game that really requires being immersed in the character, like an RPG, for instance. So I think that's definitely important to have like the opportunity, you know, to play as a female character or play as an African American character. Or for me, like one of the things that still blows my mind is I'm indigenous and I have long hair. It's crazy to me that like even in the modern games, like I say take Cyberpunk for instance or something, you have like a really expansive design your own character interface, but you can't like just create like long hair on a male character. That's like only reserved for female characters for certain hairstyles or like gender specific, which is ridiculous. I definitely have always been attentive to that as someone who's had difficulty finding like the main character in certain RPGs that I was able to like create or imagine in a way that represented me personally. So that's definitely something that I've been like conscious of in my collecting journey and just like curating the exhibit, for example. I'm definitely looking to do that again at the exhibit this year. So
Johnny runs an exhibit at the SoCal Retro Gaming Expo and will be there with many of his shirts and merch, so you should check it out if you live in the area and make sure to pick up tickets before they sell out. It seems like an amazing event with a ton of really cool pieces of video game history there. There's something coming for me, isn't there? Not today. In our continued hunt for the shirt, I sent out the net far and wide and made contact with a person who was integral with both the shirt and the advertisement behind the shirt. Andy Myers was a writer and designer for Nintendo Power from 1996 to 2006, and he was one of the 2 designers for the Luigi's Mansion game guide put out by Nintendo Power in 2002. Here he is listed right above Jeff on the credit list. He told me that he personally designed the advertisements for the shirt itself, and I knew he was a person I needed to talk to. So we hopped on a call and we talked about the magazine, the shirt, and his work on the game guide itself.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Andy Myers. I was a designer at Nintendo Power and a writer at Nintendo Power from about 1999 to 2006. And I spent like the first 3 years as a designer, and then I left for a while and came back and worked as a writer. We worked so hard every month to get the magazine out, and then the player's guides were almost like a labor of love. We would just be working crazy hours to try to get them done in time. But I think the ones I'm the most proud of are the Final Fantasy V Advanced Player's Guide, because that was a big guide. It had been released on the PlayStation, but it was the first time it had been released on a Nintendo system. But they added a bunch of extra stuff. They added like new classes and some other stuff. It was just a really difficult guide to write because it's just a huge, hard game. I was the lead writer on it, and we worked really hard to make it like the definitive Final Fantasy V guide. I will tell you this, when I was working on that guide, I got sick with something and I just kept working through it. And then I got pneumonia like right when the guide was done because I just didn't stop to rest. And I was working like 12 to 14 hour days trying to finish it. But yeah, I mean, so many hours. Back then, we had to kind of fit the player's guides into our already 12 issues a year of Nintendo Power. So we had to do the magazine, and then we had to find time and just like cram and make these guides in like a short amount of time. But we had like really good access to like the developers, people in the Nintendo Treehouse who were localizing the games, and we would work with them and basically just spend 3 weeks trying to put these together and get them to print. I think I mentioned already, I was the lead designer on this with Rebecca Lane, and she was awesome. We worked together quite a bit, but we didn't often get to be lead designers. So when we were lead designers, we also had to design the guide, but back then this is how it worked, that we'd fly out to a printer, stay there for a few days, and help them color correct the guide while they were printing it and everything. So we were there from the very beginning to the very end. I was probably 5 or 6 of these that I got to be lead designer on. But yeah, I mean, basically all the little details, the footers and the flashlights in the footer and all the little stuff in the corners, every little thing Rebecca and I designed. We picked out all the fonts. It was up to me and Rebecca to lay the whole thing out, get all the text, do all the little flourishes, and just put it all together. So I designed this poster with the frame. I remember having to fight to get to put the little frame around the edge there because that was just unusual. Anytime we were doing something kind of out of the ordinary like that, they just wanted to make sure that we weren't like straying too far from like the branding. We worked for Nintendo of America, but everything we did, you know, we had to run by both the like design team there and then also the designers at NCL. So they would look at this, like the people working on the original packaging and all the original art would look at this stuff and give us a thumbs up or say, don't do that. The ad at the end, when we worked on these, I mean, we were burning the midnight oil and cranking out like so many pages of these at a time and working like 12-hour days. I remember designing the poster. I remember a lot of the pieces in here. I can't remember if me or Rebecca designed the ad at the end. I definitely did not design the t-shirt. Sometimes we would design the shirts and then like we would actually get like 5 or 6 samples. So like I remember like I did a Fire Emblem shirt once and they sent me a few of those. And that was kind of cool. Now that I think about it, Rebecca might have designed this shirt. Either she designed it or somebody else designed it and they just gave us this image and told us to put it in the magazine. I never saw that shirt. I never got like a test copy of it. I never saw it floating around the office. It was kind of unusual, honestly. We were so busy with the guides and the shirts, we would throw them together. The marketing people like Jeff, they would kind of shield us from all those details. And with the shirts, you know, we would design them and give them to them. And, you know, maybe a couple months later, they'd bring us a free sample or not. The Nintendo Power office was crazy because it had been the same office since the Nintendo Fun Club. So we had like some of the people who worked there have been working there since the beginning. They started in the call center. There was just closets and drawers full of just all kinds of cool, weird stuff. I mean, I have every issue of every magazine and every player's guide I worked on. We never had time to really even like celebrate what we had done. Always on to the next thing. But yeah, it was an awesome group of people. I'm friends with some of them still today. We worked really hard, but we had a lot of fun. It was such a fun job. It was kind of like a dream job in a lot of ways. So as you know, for like someone like me who grew up loving video games, I definitely look back fondly and proud of some of the work that we did. When I was a writer for the magazine, like 3/4 of the time, we were playing early builds of games. The way that worked, there was like this sort of lockdown area at Nintendo of America, and you'd go up to this counter and you'd have to have your name like on a list and be like, I need blah. And they would come out. And the thing is like, you couldn't take these home, right? So like you had to be at the office. So you would check out from this place like a dev box. For the GameCube, it was like a different color. I remember that. It wasn't purple. And it had like a lock box around it. So you couldn't open it. And I think even like the lock, if I remember correctly, it like went over the power switch a little bit. So you had to kind of stick your finger underneath it. But they would give us a locked one. And then we would take it and bring it to our desk and then go turn it in at night when we were done. A lot of times it would be like a new build like every day. It's like the latest, greatest builds that they're also using to test. Certainly, there is lots of times when we had early versions of games and we saw versions of games that never came out. Like when we were moving out of that office back towards the end, I found crazy stuff. Like in my boss's drawer, we were just like going through the drawer. I found a copy of like Sin City for the NES that never came out. I don't know if it was like marketing or somebody came to me and they gave me a copy of this game called Freshly something Tingle's Rosy Ruby Land or something. It's a Tingle game. It was for Game Boy Advance. They gave me like a fully localized version of the game. It was like done. And they were like, can you play through this and let us know what you think? And I played through it and I talked to them and said, it's really weird. I like it. But they're like, do you think it'll sell in America? And I was like, oh. And they didn't release it. I started at Nintendo in 1999, I think. The first thing I ever worked on was Majora's Mask. So when I very first started, I came in like kind of like on a temporary kind of basis, and they let me design the CD packaging for a double CD of the Majora's Mask soundtrack. That was like a giveaway. It was like kind of like the t-shirt. And I was like so excited. I was like, you're really gonna let me design this? So I designed it and then they liked it. And then they hired me and I came and worked on, the first thing I worked on was the Majora's Mask Player's Guide after that. Back then it was just a smaller crew. There was a lot of overlap between what we did and what they did down in the treehouse and localization, work like getting to like actually like contribute to the games. It was pretty cool. I remember when I started, the GameCube wasn't a thing yet, and there was like rumors of something called the Dolphin, and that ended up being the GameCube. Probably the craziest thing I ever did was before the Wii came out, we were kind of hearing rumors about it, but like nobody knew anything. And I don't think anybody at Nintendo of America, like I think even in the treehouse, nobody had actually played it yet. We were just kind of hearing about it. The very last minute, my boss was like, we need someone to go to Paris to meet with Ubisoft and like talk about a Wii game that they're working on. So I like super last minute, like got on a plane, flew to Paris. I went to Ubisoft and they were like, took me into this back room. They were showing, I got to meet like Michelle Ansel, all these cool people, but then they like snuck me into this like back corner. They're like, okay, we're going to show you the Wii. And like the first time I'd even seen it, and they gave me the controller, and the game they were working on was Red Steel, which is like a fighting game. It ended up being not good. But I was supposed to write about it in like an upcoming issue of the magazine, and they were going to lift the embargo in like a month. So they were like, but they really wanted me to try it and let me know what they thought. And so they showed me how the controls were supposed to work. I was trying it, and it was just like horrible and like didn't work well at all. Yeah, but the funny thing is the version that I played, they completely changed it. I didn't say it was bad. It was obvious that I was like having like a lot of trouble getting it to work.
You're taking credit for helping make the Wii actually honestly, playable.
I remember leaving that trip and being like, oh my God, this console is going to be a disaster. And it wasn't. It was a huge hit. Honestly, it was like heartbreaking, like watching print media kind of die, because that was like what we did. You know, we were like craftsmen, and we like worked so hard to put this stuff together. And I'm not talking trash about what people do today. It's great, but like we loved doing what we did, and we did it with good intentions. You know, we wanted to like help people be excited about games and help them learn how to play through games. Knowing that somebody would use a guide that I wrote to play through a game, it's just like such an amazing feeling, and I loved that. And it was hard to watch that industry kind of go away a little bit. But I would say there's people today who have kept it alive. And it's cool that there's like a resurgence like in collectors and stuff. If you know the company Fangamer, those guys, they kept making guides when the official people stopped doing it, because they knew that people liked that stuff. They were like influenced by like the work that we did back then, the way that they designed their unofficial players guides. But they do such a good job. It kind of lives on a little bit, but it's also sad, because like there's something special about having that book there and being able to play a game, and then you don't have to read the whole thing, but maybe you're stuck on a specific part. Maybe it's like entertaining, or maybe you learn something about the game that you didn't know, or about some secret in the game you didn't know. That was always like the funnest part for me, was like putting in little secrets or little tidbits or nods to other things. Like just we worked really hard to try to make it a special experience. And I'll also say, just as like a scrubby kind of designer kid, people took a chance on me and hired me at Nintendo. And I love that there's people who still care about this stuff and collect this stuff. It's really cool. I just give a shout out to like the small group of writers and designers who, worked so hard, and we loved what we did, and we tried to put out something special every month. So definitely, they were good days. I don't know. Glad I got to do that for as long as I did.
Thank you, Andy, for talking to us about your work on the game guide and for helping us on our journey finding the t-shirt. More on that in a moment. So dark in here. I can't see anything. Jeez. Hello? In one final attempt to iron out the connection with BDA, I began desperately calling different corporate numbers to hopefully find one person who had worked there in the early 2000s and remembers their contract with Nintendo. I also reached out to BDA on LinkedIn in their corporate email. The chief HR representative from BDA responded to my inquiry with the email of Dan Muma, the head of creative at BDA, who had been there for a while. He didn't respond to my email, and no one on the phone was helpful in connecting me with an actual person from BDA in Washington. I've sunk quite a bit of time and brain power into finding someone from BDA who worked there in the early 2000s, but honestly, I think I'm just going to call it there. This path was unfortunately a dead end. You think they're going to poop on me? In my follow-up emails with Andy, he reached out to the other designer on the Luigi's Mansion game guide, Rebecca Lane, who he found out was not the person who designed the shirts. According to Andy, quote, "In her memory, the shirt design was provided to us. and neither of us ever saw the final product. End quote. So, another brick wall, huh? Well, Andy did give me another name. Jim Catechi was another designer for Nintendo Power dating back to the 90s, working on some super famous game guides including Ocarina of Time, Donkey Kong 64, Super Mario RPG, and Super Mario 64. He got back to me saying he didn't have a hand in the design of that specific shirt, but that he did have another name I could continue the hunt with. So Jim gave me the name of Kim Logan, a former design manager for Nintendo Power from 1996 to 2007. I asked her about the shirt to see if she had any involvement in the design. She got back to me, but unfortunately didn't design the shirt, and said it was most likely given to her by the team at Nintendo Company Limited in Japan. And with that, I think that avenue has ended, so let's move on. Yuba, careful. Yuba, be careful, they're mice. There are ghosts. Yuba, go on. Run away. Run away, Yuba. Yuba, get out of here. At the same time, Johnny Collects was also trying to help us get in contact with the current owner of the Luigi's Mansion shirt so we could finally lay our eyes on this thing and see that it actually exists, that this thing is real. We hopped on a call with his friend Dylan, and he showed us the shirt.
I'm saying if you had the Luigi's Mansion flashlight.
Man, it looks so good.
Oh, that's so fucking
Oh, God.
so cool.
Oh my
That's clean.
god, 20 years later and it's like
Focus,
still
focus,
like nearly perfect, which is insane. Oh my god, look at that, bro. What
Mhm.
the hell?
Dude. Condition wise, guy. Zero cracking in the print, as you can see. Like the tag is still obviously right there. I love Super Monkey.
I love Super Monkey Ball. Oh my god.
This has taken me a decade to get all these right here.
Oh man, that's so sick.
Without a doubt, there's no question about it. I was bidding on it with a few friends of mine because I wanted the shirt, but I stopped at 500. That was the max I could do at the time. And I was assuming at the time it'd go for 1,000, but it only went for 600, which I was, shocked at. It sold on a live auction on Instagram for $600 back in 2022. I saw his post in a Facebook group like a year later, like flexing his collection, and I saw this shirt. And I said, holy shit, that's the shirt. Because I've never seen the other one. So I messaged the guy, and I was like, hey, did you buy this shirt from Shane on an auction a long time ago? And he said, yes. And I was like, holy fuck, this is actually the shirt. Like, this is the one that was in the auction. And he told me he was like the biggest Luigi's Mansion collector in like the world. He had like the flashlight, he had a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of promos. And he said, I'm never going to sell it. But if I ever do, I'll hit you up first. I said, okay, I'll leave you to it. And then every, 3 to 6 months, I'd follow up with him saying, hey, are you going to sell it? I'm willing to offer you $800 to $1,000. He would say no. And then in late 2024, like November 2024, I hit him up saying, hey, are you selling the shirt? And he said, yes, I'm thinking about selling it. And I said, holy shit. Okay, this is my chance. He said, let me think about it. Give me a few weeks or so. So like 2 or 3 weeks went by. Fast forward to then, he said, he hit me up saying he'd sell it for what he paid, I was like, okay, damn.
I just can't even imagine it, like holding on to something for 3 years and then just being like, same price, fuck it. Like I'm not gonna make any money off of this.
It's just cool to have like piece of physical advertising too, like point of sale advertising, and I don't know, in-person advertising is just less and less common these days. So that's like part of the allure for me as well.
I can't wear. I'm weird like that where I can't, like, for example here, I can't wear a shirt unless I have a double. So these are all doubles that I have. I'll wear those two. I'll wear that one, but I won't wear the one on top. You know what I mean? Like I need to keep one pristine and one to wear. So like this will never get worn unless I have another one.
Like the fact that it's so well preserved after so long. I mean, obviously it's like a testament to like everyone that's like kept it in such good condition. Yeah, I mean, this was kind of the final section of the video. Really was getting to see the shirt in person. Thank you, Dylan, for giving us a look at what could be the only shirt in existence. And also just to hear about how many hands this thing probably hopped between before it got to Dylan is cool to think about where this thing might have been before. I can assume that whoever had it and sold it to Shane on eBay took very good care of it. I'm glad to have been a part of that shirt's journey. And I'm glad y'all were here on this journey with me to find this shirt. Piper ain't afraid of no ghosts. So that's it, huh? Well, it's too bad we didn't get to see it in person. But for now, this has been... Ah, dang. Power must have gone out. I can't see a thing. You know what? The house must have been struck by lightning. Who knew we were already on Area 4? Ladies, gentlemen, MBs, the shirt. What? You just thought I'd give up there? There was no way I was ending this video without laying my hands on this bad boy. Carefully and after washing my hands thoroughly, of course. I am currently wearing a 1-of-1 t-shirt. The only Nintendo Power Luigi's Mansion glow-in-the-dark t-shirt to currently exist. I talked with Dylan after the interview and asked if I could borrow this shirt for the end of the video. It's not mine to keep, but I did want to show off this bad boy in all of its glory firsthand. And I can say without a shred of doubt that this is the coolest shirt I've ever put on in my life. It's just, I can't believe I got it. Oh man, I did it. So the question has been answered. Does this shirt even exist? Yes, it does. I am wearing the proof. What a journey we took to get here. And thank God I found this shirt, because I don't think I would have had a video if I hadn't found it. Did you want to see the shirt? Oh, you can't come up this time. Oh, I first want to give a huge shout out to Dylan for letting me borrow this shirt and for putting so much trust in me to handle it with care. Thank you. I also want to thank Johnny for setting up our meetup and for talking to me about the awesome community of collectors he's a part of. Thank you to Jeff Bafus and Andy Myers for taking the time out of your days to talk to me about Nintendo Power and your work. It was so special to see behind the curtain at the wonderful work you've done that many of us grew up with and enjoyed for years. And thank you to all of the countless Nintendo Power employees that went above and beyond to help me find emails, reach out to me, and point me in the right direction on my quest for this shirt. I truly could not have done it without you all. So thank you. You checking out the shirt too? I know, it's pretty awesome. Thank you all so much for watching. Like the video if you commented on it, and comment that you liked the video. Subscribe to see whatever next niche thing I end up trying to find out there. Also, if you know of any more obscure or long-lost video game merch, games, or other oddities, let me know down in the comments, and maybe I'll pick out a few to make some videos on in the future. Thank you all for joining me on this long and winding journey, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.